have a special presentation this morning. As you may recall, a couple of weeks ago, encouraged you to attend, to be a part of Hope Over Highland. There was an event in Lynchburg. Jason Snyder kind of coordinated that, and it was a wonderful evening. We have Heather Gibson here today, who is kind of helping coordinate the Highland County effort. And she is here to make a presentation so that we know more about what we can do to support those who are helping to eradicate heroin abuse and drug abuse here in Highland County. So if you would, let's welcome Heather.
Normally I stand down there because it feels a little weird up here, but I'm good. It'll be okay. Just makes me nervous being higher up. Not used to that. Good morning, church. I do have to walk around a bit. My name's Heather Gibson, as he said. For those of you that don't know me, I am the CEO of Reach for Tomorrow, and we work here in Highland County along with Southern Ohio. I'm also the Highland County Drug Abuse Prevention Coalition president, have been for about the last 18 months. And so, as he said, we've been working very hard to eradicate heroin and the drug epidemic that is plaguing our community. And so that's what I'm here to talk to you about this morning. In my current position and as coalition president, I have the opportunity to travel around the state and meet with various communities to see what kind of things that they're doing, look for some more creative approaches, right, because what we're doing is not working. We're still losing people every day. And in those travels and in talking to different communities and people, I've come across three types of people. And so basically the first type are the people that say, just let them die. Just let them die. They chose it. And so my response to that as a Christian is every life has value. We were all here, placed here with a purpose, God's will. And we have, I believe, an obligation as Christian to reach out to those people that are hurting. The Bible tells us that we are to serve those that are afflicted, oppressed, and fatherless. And those are people suffering from addiction. The second type of person that I always run into are the ones that say, just lock them up. Just lock them up. And so what I'll tell you about that is we have now incarcerated in the state of Ohio 51,000 people, costing us $30,000 a year. So my question to them is always, how much of your tax money do you want to go to that, and how many more prisons do you want to build? Because we can't simply lock them all up. And so then I come across the most refreshing group of people, and those are the ones that want to help. And so in that, they always ask, well, how can I help? What can I do? I don't understand. You know, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so what I'll tell you, there are many on-ramps to helping in this drug epidemic. And a great opportunity for the church to get involved is Hope Over Heroin, which is coming mid-June, June 16th and 17th. We had the flyers with us. We also have yard signs. If you have a yard that's in a prominent location and you'd like to put it out front to encourage those around you to go. Wilmington had this a couple of years ago. They drew 2,000 people, and 200 people were baptized at that event. And so it's a great opportunity to bring people to Christ and to offer them the salvation and the hope that we all know is there. I work really closely with a funder who's provided funding, and some of you may have heard about the Narcan trainings that have been going on around the county. And she told me, she said, you know, it's just really bad. The numbers are really bad. We're losing so many people every day. And she said, I just was so discouraged one day. So she went downtown Cincinnati, and she went to the needle exchange. And she stood in line, just like the rest of the addicts that were there to get clean needles. because along with this, we also have an HIV and Hep C outbreak. And so anyway, she stood in line and she got to talking to those around her, and she said there was a guy behind her. His name was Ed. And she said she talked to Ed, and Ed came from a middle-class family, had a college education, had a great job, had a wife and kids, and he got hurt. He got injured. And so the doctor put him on painkillers and opiates, and he got addicted. Mike DeWine will tell you, the Attorney General will tell you, that their statistics are showing about 70 to 80% of all heroin addicts started out with a legitimate prescription pain for medicine. So opiates are highly addictive. He got addicted, and the next thing he knew, he'd lost everything. He was homeless, and he was living on the streets in Cincinnati. So usually what happens if you're on heroin for any amount of time, you're either dead or you end up in the criminal justice system. That's just how it goes. And so Ed ended up in the criminal justice system and met up with a few detectives that really didn't want Ed. They really just wanted his dealer, because there's some pretty bad stuff being funneled in right now. And so they talked to Ed and leaned on Ed and pushed Ed, and Ed wouldn't give him up. So Ed went to prison for 3 years on possession charges. 3 years in prison. While Ed was in prison, his dealer paid his child support every month. His dealer put money on his books every month and made sure he had a calling plan every month and made sure he got his drugs while he was in prison for 3 years. So what she said to me was, how do we beat that? How can we compete with that? There's no social service government agency out there that can pay somebody's child support for 3 years, give them money to run on, make sure they have contact with all the people they care about, and get them their fix that they need to make them feel better for 3 years. There's nobody out there. She said, I don't know how we compete with that. And I said, let me tell you how you compete with that. This battle is not of this world. This is spiritual warfare, and we have to fight with those weapons. And so how you beat that is you offer them the hope of eternity. You offer them nothing that this world can give them, which is salvation. So that's how we beat it, and that's where the church comes in. So I have a video now for you that helps explain a little bit of what I'm talking about, and then I'll share a few more thoughts with you before I end today.
What causes drug addiction? We think the answer is obvious. Drugs have strong chemicals that make our bodies dependent on them. But journalist Johan Hari discovered that there is more to it. The messages in this video are based on his book, Chasing the Scream, The First and Last Days of the War on Drugs. In the 70s, a research experiment found that when a rat is put in an empty cage, all alone with 2 water bottles, one normal and one drugged, it gets addicted to the drugged water and eventually dies of malnutrition. The experiment was seen as proof that drugs are uncontrollable, and it laid the foundation for 40 years of drug policy, with strict laws, rehab centers that focused on withdrawal, and a massive war on drugs, making it clear that drugs are bad. What most people don't know is that in the same decade, another scientist, Professor Bruce Alexander, thought it was obvious that lonely rats in boring cages would choose drugs over water. So he put them in a rat park, a lush cage with friends and everything a rat could want, while still having free access to drugs. Surprisingly, his rats chose not to use the drugs. The researcher even took the study one step further and had the rats use drugs for 57 days in the lonely cage until they became heavily addicted, and then placed them in the rat park. Astonishingly, the rats gradually reduced their drug use until they stopped using them altogether and lived the rest of their lives drug-free. Experiments like these happen to humans all the time. One example is in hospitals, where heavily injured patients are given a medical form of heroin. This heroin is much stronger than the heroin used by street addicts. Despite months of use, these medical users just stop when they go home to a life where they are surrounded by a loving family. The same drug, used for the same length of time, turns street users who were alone and unhappy into desperate addicts. The Rat Park experiments didn't show that chemical addictions don't exist, but it showed that they are not the only thing that matters in drug abuse. Maybe a person's access to a functioning social life and a lush cage are even more important than continuing the war on drugs mission of making drugs unavailable and penalizing the users. Thank you for watching this minute video series on public health. For easy understanding, we have included some simplifications, so please make sure to check out chasingthescream.com for the full story and stuartmcmillan.com for an awesome comic strip about the experiments. Please leave your thoughts about the Rat Park and suggestions for future topics in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
So there are 4 basic aspects to addiction. One is biological, psychological, sociological, and spiritual. And so if I have an addict, then I can get them into treatment and I can address the biological things, right? I can get them into counseling and I can address the psychological things. But it takes a community coming together to address the sociological things. And it takes a church coming together with that community and leading the way for the spiritual things. And so that's what I'm here today to ask you all to do, is to come together, be a part of that community, help to not isolate people further, bring them into the fold, show them that Jesus is the way, that's the answer to maintaining recovery. We see a lot of relapse and recidivism, and I think that's the piece that's missing. After treatment, we send them back into their community. They go back to the same thing that they came out of. They have no support system around them to help them to realize that there's a better way of doing things. And so what I always tell people is that this is our modern day Goliath, and I don't expect everyone here to be a David, although I always say if you have 3 stones in your back pocket, go ahead and pull those out because we can sure use them. But I do believe that everyone can be a Nehemiah. I believe that you can challenge the people around you, pull people together, and build the wall. It's not easy. I'll tell you that. It's not easy. It's hard work. It's dirty work. But there's never been a time in history, I don't believe, that people haven't hurt as much as people hurt now and needed Christ more than ever. So the harvest is there. It's ready. And we need to be ready as Christians to roll up our sleeves and get a little dirty. And I'll take any questions if anybody has anything. Amen. Congratulations. So June 16th and 17th will be at the Highland County Fairgrounds. I have the flyers, and on the back it has a schedule of events. So what we need from churches are for you to set up booths in the City of Resources. And Kathy Griffith has my email information. If you all want to do that, then you can just let me know. We'll make sure you have a table there. We also need altar workers for when people do want to come up and get baptized. We need people in the prayer tent. And I have kind of a weird request. We need bath towels because that's going to be, we're hoping, we're praying God will bring us 200 to 300 people to be baptized that day, and so they're going to get a little wet, so they need some bath towels. So if your church would be willing to bring in bath towels, that'd be great. It starts about 5 o'clock. If you're setting up a table, you want to be there about 3 to get everything set up at the fairgrounds. Runs Friday from 5 to 11, Saturday from 6 to 11, although there is also a prayer walk earlier in the day on Saturday, but the list of events is on the flyers. Is that it? Thank you all for having me.